Hello, Piney Ridge Church. We have come now to the middle of Holy Week. This is Holy Wednesday, or sometimes named Spy Wednesday, so called because it was on that day, the Wednesday before Jesus was crucified and risen from the dead, that the enemies of Jesus sought a way to betray him, to trick him, to deceive him, and arrest him so as to deliver him up to be crucified. They were spying by stealth a way to do so. We read in Matthew 26, verses 1 through 5, that when Jesus had finished all these sayings, as he was teaching them, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people." And then verses 14 through 16 of the same chapter, Matthew 26, we read that then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now, there are many things that we can see from this passage. Maybe one of the most glaring things is the sin of Jesus' enemies. That they loved their power and their position, their prestige. They loved money, and they loved the praise of man. They had duplicitous, and they had manipulative and deceptive and murderous hearts. But I don't think that's the focus of this passage, and I don't think it should be the focus of Spy Wednesday for us. I think the focus is on Jesus. And I think three things emerge from this passage that I see that maybe we should focus on this Spy Wednesday. One is a preparation, two is a purpose, and three is a plan. We see in verse 2 that Jesus was prepared to go to the cross. He says, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. That he knew that they were going to deliver him up and crucify him before they did. They weren't very good spies, right? Because he knew their plan before they knew it. And yet he was prepared, settled in his heart and mind that he would go and do this, that he would suffer. But it wasn't just preparing himself. I think he was preparing his disciples. He was turning to them and telling them this so that when it happened afterwards, that they wouldn't be so shaken, but they would turn and remember, he told us. He said this would happen. But beyond being a preparation, this is a purpose. Because you have to ask the question, if Jesus knew he was going to be crucified, why would he go? I mean, if you know that suffering is up ahead, wouldn't you go down a different road? But not Jesus. Why? Not because he liked suffering in itself, not because the cross was a pleasurable thing. No, he did it for a good purpose. He purposely went to Jerusalem, knowing that he would be delivered up. He purposely went to the cross. He said he laid down his own life. They didn't really take it from him. He gave it up. Why? For sinners. He gave it up for people who loved power and their position and prestige, for those who loved the praise of man and money, those who have duplicitous and deceptive, manipulative and murderous hearts. In other words, he went to the cross on purpose for people like us. Jesus knew that he was going to be crucified in the place of sinners who would turn and trust in him. And beyond a preparation and a purpose, we see a plan. Jesus went to the cross because he knew that this was all part of the plan, that they were doing what they were doing because it was a part of God's sovereign plan to bring about the salvation of many. And he also knew that this wasn't the end of the plan. He knew that he would be delivered up and be crucified, but after that he knew that he would be raised up and glorified. And so for us, my brothers and sisters, we need to see that the preparation of Jesus as something that we need. He's preparing us. That we shouldn't be so surprised when suffering happens. He told us that it would happen. And so we should be prepared, having our faith unshaken when it does come, because he said it would. But we should choose to suffer rather than to sin. Not because suffering is good, but because sin is so bad. And we should choose to suffer when it is for the good of others. And we should choose to suffer when it's for the glory of God. Suffering in itself is not good, and we should alleviate ourselves from it whenever we can, unless it is sinful, or unless it's for the good of others and the glory of God that we stay in it, just like Jesus did. And we should have a purpose in it for the good of others and the glory of God. And I think that we should also see this as a part of God's plan. That suffering is part of it, but he never says the suffering is the plan. It's just a part of it, and it's not the last part. He never takes us into suffering merely. He takes us through suffering into peace. He takes us through sorrow into joy. He takes us through shame into glory. He takes us even through death into life. That we know what is coming. There is hope that we have because of Jesus and all that he is and all that he's done. And so I say that we should be prepared. Let this Spy Wednesday prepare us. I say that we should have a purpose and see the purpose of God in all of our suffering, and that we should choose the good, the holy, the loving, the God-glorifying purposes of it. And that we should see that God has a plan, and his plan is for our good.